or his color flatter quit. I was like, what the heck is a color flatter? And he explained it's like the guy takes the black and white art and separates it out into flat color so then some colors can go in and like render it. And I was like, I'll do that. It's like, do you have any experience doing this? You know Photoshop? And I was like, no, but I'll figure it out, which has kind of been a big motto of mine throughout my career where I'm just like, oh, I could figure this out, you know?
What's going on, everyone? I'm Ian Start.
And I'm Cassie King, and welcome to the Skybound Insider.
Today we're presenting to you a very special interview with a very special man. And that man is Mr. Joseph Keating, who just released a new comic titled Evolution with Joshua Williamson, James Asmus, and Chris Sabella. Not to mention his work on Shudder, which recently wrapped this year, and Ringside, which is currently still running.
And Joseph's had a very eclectic career, not just as a writer of comic books, but as a co-editor of the Eisner-winning anthology series Pop Gun. Even held various positions over at Image Comics, including public relations and marketing, along with sales and licensing. This guy loves comic books. We were in his living room, we know.
So let's go ahead and transition on over to me and Joseph. Hey, what's going on, guys? We are here at Joseph Keating's house, writer of Evolution,
Right.
editor, colorist. Thank you for letting us into your home.
Oh, I love Skybound. They're always welcome. If you want to bring cameras and stuff, that's fine too. Let's just hang out, whatever.
It was originally just, you guys want to come over and hang out?
Yeah, and they were like, can we bring a bunch of cameras, recording equipment? And then we all figured out, hey, we can actually record all this with
We
this
might
equipment.
as well.
We might as well. We might as well do that, yeah.
First, I want to ask, how did you get your start in writing? At what point did you know you wanted to be a writer?
Well, writing started like immediately. Like when I was a kid, my dad would do this thing where, you know, you'd tell like kid stories at night, right? But he would always make us be like, all right, well, what happens? You know what I mean? And it's funny because I used to think, until relatively recently, like, oh, I was so cool of him. It was like an exercise. I think he was just like, can we just get this done? like, what do you want to have happen here?
It wasn't like building stories together.
Yeah.
It was just like,
I think,
tell yourself
which is a
story.
good parenting thing to know now. But like, but it got that spark going for whatever reason of like, oh, there's like, and immediately I was introduced to a thing where you could write a story. But yeah, it was basically a thing where I just wanted the comic that I wanted to read that didn't exist. I was like, well, I'll just do it. You know what I mean?
yeah.
You know, as a kid. And then when I realized you can get paid for this, it was like, holy cow, well, I'm going to give that a shot.
So going off of that, what was your first gig in comics, paid?
First paid gig. Well, so when I realized you get paid for it, I did realize early on, you're not going to get paid for it. You know, no one's just going to hand you, do whatever you want, you know? So for me, it was like, okay, what can I do? And a friend of mine was working on something. He was drawing a backup Savage Dragon number 115, and he was complaining about how his colorist, or his color flatter quit. I was like, what the heck is a color flatter? And he explained it's like the guy takes the black and white art and separates it out into flat color so then some colors can go in and like render it. And I was like, I'll do that. It's like, do you have any experience doing this? You know Photoshop? And I was like, no, but I'll figure it out, which has kind of been a big motto of mine throughout my career where I'm just like, oh, I could figure this out, you know?
That's huge though. I mean, that's kind of like, you just got to get there and then you figure it out.
Yeah, well, a lot of people act like there's something holding them back, or like, I got to figure out this big secret first before I can be a writer or whatever. And the big secret is you just got to do this thing a lot and you got to suck at it. And then you just got to keep doing it and doing it and doing it, and then maybe get good. And that's even before like the idea that you can actually make a living off of that. That I still like, I do it. I have no idea how, but it happens. You know, it's pretty great. But yeah, so I was color flatting that, and then I actually, from that, I was color flatting for Bill Crabtree, who color flatted Invincible early on. And so color flats unaccredited by me for that issue. And then I got to just know people, and then eventually I got a job at Image Comics, and I just kind of worked my way through different positions there. But yeah, I got to the point where like, writing was always the main thing I wanted to do, so I was like, I should do that. And it was never, anything else I did leading up to that was never begrudging. I always loved it. Yeah. And working with Image was an incredible experience and like the best education you can get in terms of like, here's how comics works.
Especially going from Savage Dragon, Eric Larson, just over to Robert's Invincible. That's a pretty solid start.
Yeah, and so I was going from that, and like when I was at Image Comics, I was doing everything from inventory to print jobs to distribution to helping with marketing and sales at a different point.
But since then, you've held a couple different titles in comics, but do you think that's important for a comic book writer to kind of have at least a solid understanding of each job?
I think it's important for a writer to have as much experience as you can, period. And I think, you know, if you want to write and just write, that's cool. But I do think it behooves you to really get experience in your industry. Because my favorite element of comics, period, is collaboration.
And this leads me to Evolution, which has 4 of you guys writing it. Can you talk to us a little bit about that? I mean, how did that come to be? Like, what made you guys all decide, like, let's all do this?
I just think we're wanting to do a horror thing. I haven't written a horror thing yet. So I just, you know, the best thing you tell me is like, this project, you get to write something you never wrote before. And I'm like, yeah, all right, cool. Like, I think one of the cool things about it being horror related is that we all have different interests and takes in horror, you know? I'm a real, like, classic horror, like, my favorite horror movies is The Innocents with Deborah Kerr. And I like grindhousey stuff, and, you know, Chris, and, you know, like, I mean, they both like that stuff too, but Chris is kind of comes from the more, like, Carpenter, kind of like, are these people actually crazy, you know, kind of stuff. And then that influenced what our takes were, and so what our narratives were, and to have that be like, I don't know, just this crazy comics experiment thing.
I love horror films. You obviously do too, with your T-shirt there.
Yeah. No, big time.
But this, it kind of feels like a horror film to me, and even like the way the art is done. Like, there's a lot of downward strokes and like a little rough in the shadows. It's like
well, that's Joe and Fenari, man, and Jordan Boyd. Jordan Fenari is the artist, and Jordan Boyd is the colorist, and it's just like they just have whatever that element is to know how. Like, I think horror, the 2 hardest things to do in comics are horror and humor. And I just think that they just know how to do horror. Because horror in comics, it's really hard to, like, do the shock thing in comics.
Yeah.
So it's really about developing mood and making people feel creeped out. And I just feel they make you feel really creeped out.
Yeah, I think they did a really good job with the art with that.
And, you know, even though the letter of Patrick, he, just the way it has, like, a tooth to it. And it's kind of, in a perfect way, sort of off. And so it makes you just feel slightly unhinged. It's real.
The speech bubbles are a little dirty.
Yeah,
they're not like
dirty,
clean speech bubbles.
So you're like, something's just slightly off here.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know how I feel about this. I don't know. This is the first horror book I've done, so I'm learning as I kind of go along. But I just feel like, yeah, that's how you got to do it.
Yeah.
You know, your own take and just like let the reader think that something's kind of off. You know.
You definitely get that feeling from issue 1.
Right on. Well, it's good to hear. We got 1 down. We got to keep the rest. We got to keep it going.
Joseph, if you're watching this, we want to thank you for letting us into your beautiful home, letting us play with your beautiful dog, letting us drink your beautiful seltzer water. It was magical.
And if you haven't already, go check out all of Joseph's books. And if you're into anthologies, then we couldn't recommend Pop Gun enough. Go ahead and like, subscribe, comment down there, and we'll see you all next time. Roll title card.